Hi there, Steve Kaufman here. Today I'm going to talk again about language learning, or more specifically, language study versus a more natural approach to learning. If you like my videos, please subscribe. When I wrote my book on language learning about 10 years ago, on the cover I put, and by the way, this is the Chinese version that was sold in China, I put this picture of a crooked tree. Because at the beginning of the book, I had this parable written by Zhuangzi, or ascribed to Zhuangzi, the Taoist or Taoist philosopher, about this crooked tree, which represented sort of the natural growth of things, that we have to learn to appreciate things for what they are. And in my book, there's a number of references to the sort of, call it Zen, call it Taoist approach to learning, which is sort of a natural effortlessness. I mean, Zhuangzi referred to Wu Wei, like, no, you're not doing anything and yet you're learning. It's that sort of passive approach. It's always been a big part of my feeling about language learning. I acquire more words incidentally than I do through deliberate study. And I looked this up, I Googled, deliberate study versus, passive learning or more natural learning. And there was a study in, I think, Saudi Arabia, and you'll find this if you Google, which again showed that taking two groups of students, 50 in each group, those that did the deliberate study using, memory techniques, synonyms, antonyms, and so forth, versus those who studied, vocabulary through extensive reading, that the group that did the extensive reading did much, much better. Again, for example, with German, like I got stuck trying to learn the declension tables, but when I stopped doing that and simply read and listened, my overall German ability improved, and some of the declensions just started naturally falling into place. And very often we are doing these sort of deliberate learning activities, and we think we're learning, and in fact, it just seems to slip through our fingers within a few days. All of the, declensions in Russian or whatever it might be have just simply evaporated. So that's always been my prejudice, and occasionally I stray from that. So here I am learning Hebrew, struggling to master the Hebrew alphabet, where some of the symbols are completely different from anything I've seen. Some of the symbols resemble, like an I in English or in the Latin alphabet, and yet it's sometimes V, sometimes U, sometimes N, and it's very difficult to get the brain to adapt to this new system. And so where I've daily been trying to read and struggling to read and struggling to remember what the meaning of these significance of these letters was, I have now adopted a new technique, which I'm going to share with you. And that is to say that because I study on my iPad, and I have my mini stories here, and of course we have text-to-speech. So I can now read the story, what I've started doing now is I go through every story, I just go through it, and I hit...
יוסי, אוהב, קומדיות, יותר מאשר, סרטים, רומנטיים.
And so with every word that I press on with my stylus, of course I get the meaning, and I get the sound. So I don't struggle to try and read this word. It tells me what the word is. I'm not trying to, like, to me this looks like an I-O, but it's not with two little quotation marks, but it's not.
יוסי.
It's Yossi. It's not I-O, it's Yossi. So, by doing this often enough, it's going to naturally flow into my brain. That pattern gets sort of established. And it's a lot more pleasant. I don't have to fight it. I don't have to struggle. I just go through the lesson. When I'm finished, I listen to the natural voice and I follow along again. So that I'm giving myself this sort of more natural exposure to the language, word for word. If the language were written, say, in an alphabet that I was more familiar with, I think I would do phrases. But still, the idea of going through the lesson once, hearing it in text-to-speech, whether it be word for word or phrase by phrase, and then again listening to the human voice read that again, and you read along, I'm not forcing myself to do anything. I'm just letting it flow in. I'm spending time with the language, which again is a key, attitude, spending time with the language. And I'm very suspicious of learning activities which force you to think. Yeah, when they, you have quizzes and drills. I mentioned the other day, living language tries to get you to match up these new Hebrew words that supposedly you've learned and that match them to the corresponding English word, as if this exercise in forcing you to try and remember something is going to have some benefit. It has not been my experience. I think it won't have any benefit. I'm better off to spend that time just letting more of the language wash over me. And because in Hebrew, of course, getting used to the writing system is such a big hurdle initially, and I want to get to where I can read so that I can listen and read and follow my normal learning practices. So I would rather spend my time just letting the language wash over me, and that's why I think this approach of going through these lessons, just going through them, knocking them off the list. There's now 30 mini stories in Hebrew. I'm going to go through all 30 mini stories. I can go back again, go back again. I can go back again with a different objective, and I am tagging some words for, preposition or whatever it might be, adjective, adverb, time, verb and stuff. But initially, I just want to let it wash over me. And so this is an approach, and it's kind of more of this passive learning as opposed to deliberate study. So I would be interested in hearing from you. How effective is deliberate study? How effective is forcing you to think? As opposed to simply allowing, exposing yourself to more and more of the language, letting it wash over you, and letting the brain gradually start to form some patterns. So there you have it. Deliberate language study versus a more natural approach to acquiring the language. I would be interested in hearing your views. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.